Hello, friend. Welcome to the broadcast today. Janet and I are here hosting a bit of a marriage program. We're reintroducing some teaching that we did entitled The 10 Commandments of Marriage. And as we get into this broadcast, we're going to be looking at the fourth commandment, which actually you can look at the 10 commandments as marriage vows, God's marriage vows to His people. And He did say that He was married to His people. And we're going to be dealing with the Sabbath. God saying, I want exclusive time with you if we're going to have a good relationship. And honey, is it important that to have a good relationship, people spend time together?
Absolutely. Some people say, well, I just spend quality time. But really, quality time comes out of quantity time. So it's very important to have time together. And it's fun too.
Yeah, it is fun. And listen, we've got a whole lot of other things to share, in addition to that. So I think this is going to be an eye-opener. If you got a Bible, grab it, and we're going to get into the Word together. All right, the fourth commandment. We come to verse 8. God says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Sabbath literally means intermission, rest, to cease from labor, to put down your work. And holy means separate unto God. God is saying, if you want a long-term relationship with me, we've got to have time together. Special time, exclusive time, even extravagant time. God says, I want a whole day. And in order to have a healthy, growing marriage, husbands and wives need time together. Special time, exclusive time, sometimes extravagant time. And it will not happen if we don't plan it and make it a high priority. So many couples are trying to squeeze one another into their busy schedules. Well, dear, I can see you on Thursday from about 4 o'clock to 4:40. That ought to give us enough time to have a very meaningful, vulnerable conversation. Some people schedule every other thing first. Time with their friends, sports, whatever, while the husband or wife gets a few leftover minutes here and there. I had a friend that, as well as work his job, and his job required him to be gone a lot, he played over 200 rounds of golf a year. I'll let you do the math, and I'm being conservative here. You count travel time and warm-up time, 5 hours minimum for one round, minimum. 200 rounds of golf a year, plus his job that took him away a lot. And he confided to me, he says, Pastor, he said, my obsession with golf cost me my first marriage. And there's nothing wrong with golf. I love to golf. And I do schedule time for myself, and Janet understands that it's one of the things that we work out. I've got Bayless time, where I do things that fill up, my emotional tank. And Janet has Janet time. She goes out with her girlfriends, or she goes, shopping, or goes and gets her nails done, stuff that she likes to do, and I've got time, but we also have time together. And I realize that if our marriage is going to make it, and we've been married, be 27 years in a couple months here, that we have to schedule time, exclusive time, and sometimes even extravagant time together. I even heard about a guy that, loved golf, and he was out with some friends, and they were on the fourth green. He's getting ready to putt, and in the street nearby, there's a funeral procession going by. This guy, instead of putting, he takes his hat off and bows his head, and his friend said, man, George, I had no idea you're that sentimental. He said, well, I was married to her for 25 years. With that, let's hear from Janet on this point. We have a real full life, and sometimes we have to juggle things. She had a little bit to say.
I guess for me, first of all, just to realize that it really is important. Our marriage relationship, the rest of our life really the fullness of our life really comes out of how deep and how special our relationship is, and the enjoyment in life. And so just to realize how important it is, and then when in realizing that, like, okay, if we have to, let's get it down on paper, where we're both, because your schedules can get busy, and I might not know everything you've got going, and you might not know every detail that I've got going, so just even looking at it on paper, just to make sure that it does happen, the time together.
That's good. And Janet's actually better about that than I am, and she'll come and say, Bayless, you get your calendar out, and we'll sit down, and we will plan times together. And if we don't plan them, you know what? They don't happen, because there's just too many other things happening. I think perhaps a lot of you are like us. We have very, very busy lives. There's a lot of different voices and things calling for our time and calling for our attention. And if we don't get together, she puts it down on paper. I just put it on my phone on the calendar. But we schedule time together. And so as your pastor, I encourage you, command you. No, I encourage you strongly. Schedule some time with your husband or wife. God said, hey, if this is going to work between us, you got to lay aside your work, lay aside everything else. I don't want a whole day. Exclusive, extravagant time. Tell you what, it will bless your marriage relationship. And maybe you'll just end up staring at each other with nothing to say. Well, you can work on the word stuff and speaking good words to one another during that time. The next commandment here is in verse 12, and it says, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. And from this point, we actually begin to get into a number of character issues with the commandments. And God is saying, if you want to have a good relationship with me, you need to show these characteristics. You need to have these qualities in your life. And in a marriage, these are qualities that you need to look for, aspire to have. If you're single right now and shopping, you want to get married, you need to really listen carefully in the next few minutes, because these things are really important. And this one about honoring your father and mother, Janet had an interesting thing to say about that. So if we could put her back up real quickly.
Yeah, I would say for single people that want to be married, when you are dating someone, the way they treat their parents, say, I look the way he would treat his mother. He honored her, and he had a very good attitude toward his mother. And not that I would be his mother, but the honor that he had for his mom is the honor he's going to have for me as his wife. And so I think that's just a really good thing to look at, how the boyfriend or whatever treats his mother, or the opposite, how a girl will, her relationship with her father is going to reflect a lot of what's going to happen in your relationship.
Amen. That is worth thinking about. I think among other things here, God is inferring that we must be grateful. Generally, parents put much toil, energy, love, and money into the raising of their children. And it's tragic when a child is ungrateful or unthankful. William Shakespeare said, how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. And if you get someone that is ungrateful towards their parents and feels no responsibility toward them, it will color every other area of their life as well. They're selfish and feel like the world owes them a living. It's really, really difficult to have a relationship with an ungrateful, selfish person. I think what Janet said is true. Maybe you're dating somebody right now and there's just total disrespect for his mother, in his eyes, or for his father in his eyes. You may be seeing a prophecy of your own future there. That is an important thing. Listen, thank you is an incredibly important phrase in marriage. It's very difficult to live with someone that takes all of your efforts for granted. But you know what? Someone that has honored their parents will more than likely honor you. But if they haven't honored their parents, they probably won't honor you. And it's important for us to vocalize our thanks. Sometimes we may feel grateful in our heart, but we don't say it. So we feel good about ourselves. Well, I'm a grateful person. I really appreciate what she does, or I really appreciate what they do. But if we don't vocalize it, it doesn't do them any good at all. It dies with us. Everybody say thank you. It's not that hard to say. And that is an incredibly, incredibly heavy, weighty, powerful word in marriage and in relationships. Thanks. You know what? I want to tell you, I appreciate all the time you spend at work and providing for the family. I want to appreciate the way you've raised our daughter. I just want to say thank you for, the way that you've done this or the way that you've done that. Look for different ways to praise. In fact, I would say even be extravagant with your thanks or with your praise. And we come to the sixth commandment, verse 13. This is a good one, really applies to marriage. You shall not murder. Don't kill your spouse. It's really hard to have a happy marriage that way. Jesus actually expanded on this, and I'm just going to quote part of it in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 and 22. Jesus said, "You've heard that it was said, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be in danger of the judgment.' But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment." Listen carefully. If you're going to have a good, healthy, lasting marriage, you need to learn to be gentle. People that are easily angered and that are violent and that have an explosive temper destroy relationships. You can go to some people's houses and there's holes in the doors and in the walls where either he or she has, put their fist. I remember it was with a couple friends one day, and we had an acquaintance that had died of an overdose of drugs. And so we'd been to the funeral, and we're sitting around the house there, and we're sort of in this deep blue funk. And his wife, she's vacuuming. And, we were just kind of like in this depressed thing, and I'm sure we were drinking and, doing drugs as well. And, rather than telling his wife, "Hey, sweetheart, just turn the vacuum off. It's just not cool doing that right now." Without a word, he just walked over, grabbed the vacuum cleaner away from her and threw it through a wall, and then came back and sat down with us. And then I started looking around the house, and that vacuum-shaped hole wasn't the only hole that there was. And you know what? Their marriage did not last. You need to get a handle on your anger. And it's not always the guy with the temper. Some women go ballistic without too much provocation, throw things and curse and swear and hit. And listen, I've talked to enough people through the years. I'm talking about church people. Breaking dishes, throwing things, throwing the TV remote, screaming, hitting. I mean, you name it, and we've heard of it. If you are dating someone that blows up easily, maybe they get cut off in traffic and they just, there's just a string of foul language. They lose their temper. Listen to me. You better put on the brakes. And you better get that issue resolved. You don't want to marry somebody that's got a temper like that. And if you're the person with a temper, don't say, "Well, it's just because I'm Irish." Well, I'm Irish too. Don't say it's just my Latin blood. Nah, it's just you've got some learned behavior and somebody didn't whip your behind when you were little. And you need to get a handle on that. It's one of the worst things in a marriage. Anger erodes relationships. And if you've got a hot temper, get it under control or the devil will control you through it. And another common expression of anger is to put on an angry countenance and go stony silent. The person that responds this way generally uses their silence and angry moodiness to punish whoever they're upset with. And again, it's not a healthy thing for a marriage relationship. If you get angry quickly and forgive slowly, you are going to be a hard person to live with. Work at being quick to forgive and make the controlling of your anger a serious matter of prayer. And friend, God will help you. Because if you don't master it, it will master you. It can harm your marriage, your family, and any other meaningful relationships you have. Janet had something to say. Let's see what it is.
Yeah, I remember when the twins, they probably were about a year old, and you happened to go golfing one day or something, and I just was really upset because I was glad you could go golfing, but at the same time it's like, oh, I got to stay here with the kids. And so I told you about it, and then so you thought, okay, I won't go golfing next time. So you stayed home from golfing. Then I wasn't happy either, and I'm thinking, God, I have a problem here. I'm not happy if he goes. I'm not happy if he stays. So something's wrong. And I remember getting down. We had a yellow chair. We had yellow carpet, yellow chair in our living room, and I just knelt down there and I said, God, I just don't know what's wrong, but I need you to help me. And I fell asleep. And when I woke up, this scripture came to me that I had heard someone share about years before that. And I just want to read that. It's Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 15. It says, looking diligently, lest anyone fall short of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up cause trouble, and by this many become defiled. And the part in there about the root of bitterness just came to me, and I thought, oh. And somehow, I don't know, just Holy Spirit just brought to my remembrance just that I had bitterness toward my dad. And so I, right there at that yellow chair, I took care of it and brought it before God, and just had to release it all to him, and that made all the difference in the world. But before that, everything that he did, I saw through the eyes. Everything that he did was colored by what I was upset with my father about. And when I got rid of that, everything looked all different. So we just want to make sure our hearts are clear. Makes everything sweeter.
That was a happy day in our marriage, actually, when I was glad she shared about that. You know, there was a season when Janet was sort of mad at me all the time, and I couldn't seem to please her, and she shared pretty frankly about that. And sometimes past stuff, you know, affects us in our life, you know, past abuse, et cetera, et cetera. The thing is, God will help us with it. And you never get anything worked out until you're willing to face it, take a hold of it, say, you know what, I got a problem here. Bring it before God. God will give you the key to unlock those things just like he gave to my wife. All right, commandment number 7. Look with me, if you would, at verse 14. You shall not commit adultery. With God, putting other things, other people before him is spiritual adultery. He speaks of it throughout the Word. God calls dabbling in the occult or in other religions spiritual adultery. And obviously in a marriage, you'd be hard-pressed to imagine anything more damaging than unfaithfulness, adultery. Be faithful not only in action, but also in thought as well. And again, Jesus expanded things here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 and 28. Listen to what he said. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Having a lustful, exploitive disposition will choke a marriage. Love gives, lust takes. Love serves, lust demands. Love nourishes, lust chokes. And listen, sex is a good thing. It's a real good thing. And God created to be enjoyed within the context of marriage. It is a God-given gift, but lust has no place, even in the marriage. And Janet, again, had something to say about it. I think we ought to listen to her.
I remember when we were first married, the pastor's wife of the church where we were at shared with me an incident that she had going to a gas station. And she found herself going to this gas station to get gas really quite often, more often than she needed gas. And the reason was there was a guy there that she kind of liked. She's a married lady. And she said she realized what she was doing, and she said she just had to nip it in the bud, or God ministered to her heart or something, but to just nip that thing in the bud, the thoughts of that person, and you know, just kind of having dreams and thoughts about how she could be with him and how nice it would be or something like that. But she said, God put it, you've got to nip that thing in the bud. And she shared that with me. And, you know, I think in every relationship, thoughts like that come. And they just need to be nipped in the bud, because you start entertaining them and pretty soon you put action to them. Like she started putting action to it by going to the gas station. And if you don't nip that thing, cut it off, stop it. This is not right. It's not going to help anything. It'll just keep growing. And so that really has helped me it was great to have it right at the beginning of our marriage, and it's always, I've never forgotten it.
It's very good. You know, I think that we can affair-proof our marriages if we'll try. 3 thoughts, and I'm going to actually end with this. We're not going to get through it all tonight. I wasn't sure how long we'd take, but we're going to try and end pretty close on time. 3 thoughts to affair-proof your marriage. Number 1, you need to have affirming communication. Number 2, companionship. Number 3, closeness. Affirming communication, companionship, and closeness. So important to affirm one another. And I'd like you to write these verses down. Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verses 1 through 6. There you find Solomon complimenting his bride's physical features, her body. It was very important because if you read in that same book in chapter 1, it's quite evident that it was an area of insecurity for her. She was a country girl, and she said, "Don't look upon me because I'm dark." She was deeply tanned from working in the vineyards, and she felt insecure when compared to the pampered ladies of the court. And Solomon built her up where she felt most insecure. Ladies, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Don't tell your husband that I told you this, but he's just a little boy in a big body, and you need to admire him, and you need to vocalize your admiration of him. In fact, in the Amplified Bible there in Ephesians chapter 5, I think it's verse 33, where it says, you know, wives, see that you respect your husband. One of the things the Amplified Bible brings out about that original text is you need to admire him exceedingly. It's a rough world out there. And when we come home, man, if we've got a gal that will admire us and help us, it's better than gold. You can give us wings or you can put chains on us. I'm beseeching you, help us to fly. We need affirming communication from you. The things that we do right, tell us. Don't always tell us everything that we do wrong. I mean, when we obviously need to hear about those things as well, but it's important to affirm us. And guys, we really need to affirm our wives as well. It's so important to do that, especially if you have an area that you perceive your wife has some insecurity in. Really, really, encourage her. It's kind of a funny thing. I mean, here at Cottonwood, we've been going 25 years, and we'll get home, and I'll still ask my wife, I said, "What did you think of the message?" And it's really important, to me, to hear from her. And she's honest with me, but even when she, thinks I could have done better, she couches it in terms that are encouraging. And we really need that. And the second thing, if you're going to affair-proof your marriage, there needs to be companionship. Do stuff together. Even recreational stuff. It's funny. Sometimes you'll get a husband say, I don't know what happened, we got married and she changed. She deceived me. It's like, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, when we were dating, she'd sit down and watch a football game with me. And she'd go to a baseball game with me, or we'd go play golf together, and it was just great. I thought, man, I have found the woman of my dreams. She likes football. And then since we got married, she won't even watch a game with me. She says she never liked football anyway. And, the reason she sat and watched football with him, she was trying to catch him. Spending that time. And you know what? It was important. And it does seem, from the guy's point of view, that, hey, man, she's changed. And the other side of the coin, hey, he used to buy her roses and send her all these little dorky romantic things and take me out to a cafe, and we'd have a coffee, and we'd talk, and we walked on the pier, and we walked down the beach. And man, he never does that stuff anymore. He's changed. And I think sometimes we get this thing in our mind, well, like, I got her. Why do I need to still do that stuff? Jesus said in the book of Revelation, writing to the church, says, you need to repent and return to your first love and do the first works. You've fallen from where you were, and it's so applicable in marriage. Find some things that you like to do together. Sit down and watch a football game with him. Take her for a walk on the beach or walk on a pier. Guys, Take her shopping. Some stores are even smart enough, they put chairs, you can sit in them when she's in the dressing room. I like those stores. But it's important that we spend time together, and even recreational things. You may be as different as they would say in Australia, different as chalk and cheese. But you know what? What you might want to do is take a list and write down 10 things that you like to do or that you'd like to try. And then just maybe even rate them from 1 to 5. You know, 5 being something you'd really like to do, 1 something you'd be okay doing. And then compare lists. And if there's any overlap in any area, do those things together. Have companionship. Because you know what? We talk about having quality time. Quality time only comes out of quantity time. It goes back to that thing. We have to spend time with one another. Friend, I hope you have been gleaning some important things from this series. You know, I think it just gets better and better as we continue looking at the 10 commandments of marriage. The 10 commandments, God's wedding vows, you know, to His people. Not just a list of things that you can't do or things you must do, but if God's people are going to have a vital, living, healthy relationship with Him, these elements need to be in place. And there is such application, you know, to marriage relationship and any other relationship for that matter. And so you need to join us next week because it just gets richer and richer. And I want to say this as I end today. Listen, it's not a coincidence that you've hung on this long to listen to me talk. You may be in dire need of help right now. Maybe your life's fallen apart at the seams. I want to tell you, God cares for you. He loves you. He knows about your situation. Call upon the name of His Son, Jesus, today. God will help you.
What does it take to have a great marriage?
How can you weather those challenging times
Keep the fires of romance glowing.
and fulfill your dreams of a lifetime of joy together?
The fact is, good marriages have to be worked at. A good marriage has to be built on more than passion.
So, how do you begin to build a great marriage? Where can you start? With Bayless Conley series, Godly Wisdom for a Great Marriage.
And you know what? If I'm in right relationship with God, and if I'm full of His Word, which is His wisdom, and I'm full of His Spirit, I have a reverence for God, it's going to affect how I treat this woman and how I relate to this woman, and God's going to deal with me about that because marriage is His idea.
Use the information on the screen to order your copy of this powerful, life-changing series by Bayless and Janet Conley. Godly Wisdom for a Great Marriage includes 3 CDs or DVDs that will help you build a truly great marriage.
Also, this series has a 4th bonus disc, The Role of the Husband and the Role of the Wife. If you are newly married or have 50 years together, this series can give you the power and commitment to live each day closer to God and each other.
And when you contact us through the information on the screen, remember that your gift makes it possible for the Answers broadcast to continue bringing our living Jesus to a dying world.